of the things which I'm really ashamed of is that I never asked an employee when I was head of HR. I never asked even a single employee, what is it that you like to do and what spectacular can you do, a thing can you do for this company in that field? I really regret having not asked that question. Now then, when I'm heading a company, it happened by mistake. One of the team leaders was not performing and I happened to ask this question, what is it that you love to do? The effect was spectacular. The very next quarter, that employee in the new role won the best performer. It can be so spectacular. Your comments on this?
Yeah, please.
But agree with you. We kind of go back to the earlier question that was asked on managers' role being diminished or increased. It has definitely increased, and this is exactly the reason why it is increased. That's because earlier in the grading system or whatever system, the behavior that this particular model drove was, as long as you meet your numbers through your team members, you are thumbs up. Now what we are saying is, if the organization has to move its own performance bar, all of us as managers have to convert into coaches. And if we convert into coaches, one of the questions that we should ask our employees is what you just mentioned.
100% agreed.
Yes.
Good evening, sir. My question is not directly linked with PMS system. It's about challenges in front of HR. It is said that HR is expected to contribute in the execution of a business strategy. And as per practice, strategy is restricted up to top management level. And now, if HR has to contribute for the business of success of business strategy, how do we take that strategy to the bottom level? How do we make employee at the bottom level to understand about business strategy and what is expected? How to make him realize? Thank you.
I haven't been able to understand the question.
Yeah, so I'll probably summarize a little
It's
bit.
basically about challenges in front of HR. Now it is expected by HR department to contribute in the execution of business strategy. And now if you want to achieve the business strategy goals, every employee has to be aware about the business strategy. Now how to make employees aware about the business strategy?
Communication.
How to make it more simple? Basically, strategy is always in numbers and figures and
Right. So every year, every organization will have a strategy meeting. You will have certain numbers that are drawn up, and they are signed off by the board, an internal as well as an external board, depending on the kind of the organization. And at the end of it, it is the responsibility of HR department to wear the hat of marketing managers and go around explaining that this is what your organization is going to be gunning for the entire year. The alignment of the employees' goals or the department heads' goals will have to be to that of what the organization wants to achieve. So once that is announced, and you have to use various communication channels, you have to use internal radio, internal TV. If you have basic notice boards, will also do communication by the manager to its employees. So that's one way you need to explain what is the strategy of the organization to your employees. But coming to your other question on strategy and HR strategy, and is HR strategy at how do you prepare your HR strategy? I remember many years ago I had a goal item, HR strategy linkage to business strategy, and that was given some 20% weightage. And I remember creating a strategy deck and saying, this is the strategy of my business unit. My business unit wants to do work in Iraq. And what is it that you as HR can do? So we will say, our recruitment, we will have to try and empanel people, or we will have to see whether it is even safe. What are the compliance issues around that particular region? So there's a linkage that we have to do. But today, I think strategy is commoditized, and the differentiator is actually execution. So there's a lot of importance that we give on how does one execute an individual, a department, an organization. How is it that you actually execute more than the strategy? You just type strategy HR, you'll get half a dozen links on strategy which you can just cut, copy, paste.
and even timely execution, definitely will help the business, to achieve the goals.
Thank you, madam.
And I just have one more additional points to what we just heard. If your topic is that, how do I get into that strategy meeting? It all depends on what value you are going to bring on the table and how much you will influence your leadership. So if you really have some solid points to be discussed or to be inputted in your strategy, probably the HR manager has to take up the cudgel and just go and talk to the leadership.
Yeah.
You have a question sir? Actually, many of us are from this manufacturing industry.
Please take mic, not audible.
This question is for Shantanu sir. Actually, many of us belongs to this manufacturing industry, and we have almost more than around 50 to 60% contract labors. We are planning PMS for the managers. Those persons who are directly involved in this product making, while designing the goals like the zero customer complaint or 100% production plan versus actual, while designing these type of KPIs, do we are considering these these facts as well as there are some unions. In some companies there are unions. Those unions are also not that much customer centric as we require. In that cases, while putting a goal, do these companies or the management or putting the strategy for the customers, do every management taking all these external as well as the internal constraints?
Yes.
Yeah.
See, I think I can share my experience when I worked with General Motors. It was not contractual level. And again, I would say that maybe it's not fair to keep that in mind, that whether the person who is working on the shop floor, whether it is contractual or a permanent worker. It is mainly the role which he is delivering. So we have something called QFD, Quality Function Deployment. And under that we have another, on top of that, something called Global Manufacturing Systems. So what we did is that right from the topmost, the plant manager level to the operator level, there are different types of KPIs which has been actually created, and those are displayed. And I think at the lower level, if you look at, this is more of what kind of scraps they generate, or what kind of safety related incidents they meet with, or for that matter from that particular line, whether there is a customer complaints. So there maybe it's a detailed sessions. I would not be able to explain to you in this meeting, but it's possible to do. It all depends on the intent of the company and the leadership. So if you really want to deploy that down the line, it's very much possible, and some of the companies are doing that.
Yeah, I just want to add one thing to what Shantanu said. In a unionized environment, and one of the good things about a unionized environment is that once the union commits, you rarely will find workers defaulting on it, because the collective pressure of pride of we committed to it, therefore we deliver is such a high thing. That's one of the questions you asked. Is PMS moving the world, or is conscience moving the world? And that's an example of conscience moving the world, because they are committed, they are very passionate about it, and they won't let that productivity bar down. So that's one of the pluses of a negotiated agreement, because there are a lot of people who are party to it, which is what we are trying to do otherwise in a participative decision making model.
And I think even for that matter, if you look at the union management relationship or the wage agreements what we sign, this is the basic minimum. So if you really want to drive a culture, and out of this 100, 200,000 people, you find that there are around 20% of them doing better than others, I guess probably you need to have that kind of a discussion with the union that you want to reward them because they are doing better than others. And it all depends on, again, what kind of relationship, what kind of influence you have on the unions. It's pretty much doable. It's not very difficult to do.
This is Govind from Hyundai. My question is to Kavita. You had talked about removing Belco completely. It's definitely a wonderful idea, because as Vimal said, we don't even want to play our children. My doubt is at a transactional level. I mean, it's from the increment distribution or budgeting. From that point of view, how do you do it without completely, if you completely remove the bell curve part of it? If you could throw some light on it.
Organizations who have completely removed the bell curve, right? You take the Googles of the world and Yahoo and Microsoft and I mean the list is increasing. The budget will remain the same. Now that's why again I go back to the fact that the manager's job is increasing and becoming more difficult. So you complete your appraisal at the tactical level. You go back and provide inputs for his development. Because coaching and development is key. You're no longer talking about strengths and weaknesses, but you're talking about what is it that you can continue doing and what is it that you should change. You are no longer a manager who will control. You will have to change as a manager to becoming a coach. And that is where at the end of the performance appraisal cycle, when you go to finance and you say this is your ratings, you don't have a bell curve. And if, for instance, you are a very socialistic manager, and you say everybody is brilliant, my God, my team has excelled, but the organization has not even met its revenues, you are going to get so much as your bonus, and that is where you will need to again differentiate. So the bell curve can never go away in my personal opinion. What we need to change is the rigidity of the bell curve that we have been implementing it for the last decade or so. We've kept saying 20% top performers, not more than 30% top performers. Even it can't be a 30.01, which is where I think we kind of went a little bit too far. But if there is some range, which we have currently done in our organization, as I said, you know, the meets performance are the people at the, you know, at the center. Not necessary to just remain at a certain level. It can be slightly higher. So while you do away with the bell curve, all these organizations at the back end will definitely have a limited kitty. The kitty is not going to fall from the sky saying you have extra kitty because you've done very well. That will remain.
I think the bell curve debate is a little nuanced debate. Sometimes it gets oversimplified. So, you know, I'll just add, if you were to take your organization, look at the last year increment and put all the employees in rows and percentages against each one, and assuming that they are in the same range of salary, and if you look at how many people got 1%, 2%, 3%, 4%, 5%, and draw a curve on that, you know, organizations which say they don't practice a bell curve, maybe practicing a bell curve there. And vice versa can happen. Organizations which are practicing a bell curve in the so-called label of performance, when you go to the salary curve and then say how many got 0%, how many got 1%, 2%, 3%, you will find the curve is very different. So both curves are important enough curves. It's a very nuanced debate. I think the idea is to balance, there is no one right answer, and try to figure out if you have gone too far, correct it. If you have gone too far this side, correct it. I think that's the point that Kavita is making. It's more nuanced. It's not a simple, it's not a headline alone kind of discussion. There is a lot of, you know, deeper this thing behind it. So you take the compensation curve and find out what is the bell curve. You take the promotion curve and see what has happened. How many people get promoted once a year, once in 2 years, once in 3 years, once in 4 years. There are so many curves you can draw on the entire cycle and process.
Hi, my name is Riju and I have a question.
On the question that you just asked, Google has done away with the bell curve, but they are still very good on their revenues. And when I go back and, you know, wonder how is it that, you know, they've done away with the bell curve but still, you know, run beautifully, there are two things that strike as differentiators. One is their recruitment process is very strict, it's very strong, it's very robust. I mean, any adjective that you can use there. So any which ways, the kind of people that they are hiring at astronomical salaries are not going to be found, you know, every day. Out of 100 students in an institute, you will have maybe one person who is cat's whiskers. So, you know, the second is the culture that they have innovated. So first is recruitment process being very strong, and that's the reason they've been able to survive without a bell curve. And second is they don't have any qualms in calling a person and saying you've really not done well, and at the end of the year you need to improve. And you know, there is competition, but at the same time there is collaboration. So that's a very different culture altogether. So to each his own.
You know, I think this is a very important, interesting debate. You know, I think just to take Kavita's point, normally we have this perception that these IT companies who are made a name for themselves are very relaxed and it's kind of a little more free. but they also really have a very strong this systems, which is going to have some kind of framework. It doesn't work just like that. One of the major observation, it's my personal observation, is that on the performance management systems, especially we encourage the internal competition so much that collaboration goes for a toss. And recently, when I think Microsoft also has done away with this bell curve, I was going through the news items. They have brought in 4 points. One is the impact the individual is bringing on the system. Learning. I don't know how many of the so-called performance management systems have this as one of the criteria. So the manager is supposed to ask in the last quarter, what is your reflections, what can you, or what could have been done better? And then the collaboration. These are 3 most important points. On that basis, the manager is supposed to give a rating. So it's not that they are just done away with bell curve, that means they have just become done away with the performance management systems. So we need to keep that at the back of our mind.
Hi, my name is Riju. I am from IPFI and I have the privilege of working with many HR from different industries. So I have an interesting question for Shantanu and for Manjula. So Shantanu, imagine you are part of FirstRide. And how would you exactly go about doing the performance management for a startup, which also has blue-collar workers? And Manjula, the same question for you. Imagine you are part of Schaeffler. What would you do if you were the HR there and you wanted to implement a performance management system?
Whom do you want to answer first, right?
Shantanu first.
Shantanu first, yes. Please.
Well, I have always worked in manufacturing systems, so I need to first understand the business. So that's the first thing which you started saying, that if you do not understand the business, it would be foolish for anyone to recommend something for that business model and the environment about something like a performance management system. So I will first learn let me get an opportunity first to work in e-commerce, and then I'll come back.
Okay. I have worked in manufacturing segments, so I can give you both the perspective out here. So we used to have 360-degree appraisal there. So I was working for a German multinational company. So I know it was a very long process that we used to go through. But then we had that process in place at one time. So now I think when I'm on this side of the business, it's totally very different. So I think Shantanu will definitely answer now, because I know processes are being set in different segments. For a startup where processes are not set, it becomes very difficult.
Manjula, actually, if I understand to it, so you probably have a very service perspective to it, right? And manufacturing, it's essentially, it could be slightly commodity based, maybe bearing, ball bearings or something of that sort. Does your service perspective change how you now look at manufacturing?
No, it does not.
Well, try to take this. Yeah. I think overall, if I look at this is something which we had some discussion a few days back in our leadership team meeting, that when you actually are in a commodity-based market, how do you bring the differentiator as compared to some of the other companies? And that's why we actually talked about the service excellence. So, I think these things really are changing. So it's not really typified that while you are in manufacturing, you have a product and you have to literally get your box to that mindset. So you are right, I think probably this is now getting more or less swapped. And similarly, maybe in the e-commerce section or probably the BPO, if you look at long back, I heard that Citibank, when they wanted to change their culture, they brought in someone from an assembly line experience in a very senior role, just to kind of get that mindset of assembly line discipline in a retail banking sector. So these are some of the different, totally out of the box thinking which are coming into the picture.
So we will take maybe 2 more questions from the audience, and then I'll ask the final question of everyone.
Yep. Hi, Amol here. One of the doubts which came up during the discussion was, it is mostly around the goal writing. Should we do cascading of the goal? Should we do alignment of the goal? Or should we let the individual goal to put in? Or the balance of all 3?
The answer is all 3. When it comes to the direction, the vision, it has to be cascaded. with the larger goals for that matter. Because it's a team goal, there needs to be an alignment that what I need to do, because it's not me alone, I need help from few others. So therefore there has to be an alignment. And I can quote Ram Charan's one of the processes that we were recently doing for the next quarter's goals. It's called joint practice sessions, which are, you'll not find on Google probably, but you'll find something on his book called Attacker's Advantage. And you can seek me in terms of what it means. I can help you, but Google won't give you anything on that. So it requires all three in that case. When it comes to taking commitment, it requires even upward as far as the goals are concerned. So in this JPS, we have been doing all these three aspects as far as the goal setting for the next quarter is concerned. So all three are critical and important.
I was waiting. Yeah. I was actually surprised at why this question has not come up. Very difficult questions. I think many companies have got different kind of definitions. But typically what happens, as Vimal has said, and this is I have seen more or less in every company follows. If you are not a performer, your potential will not take you too far. You have to first perform in your current role and show some results. And on top of that, if you show certain things which is required as per that company's culture and the competency, then of course that potential gets considered. But only with the potentials, I guess, it may not go too far.
So just to give a perspective about if you're talking about performance and potential, so what is potential to me? It's all about engagement, ability and aspiration. Because you can continue to perform what is given to you, but if you don't have an aspiration, where are you heading? So that shows the potential, where are you wanting to be. So that's one of the critical things. Ability you continue to enhance, because if you have an aspiration, you will continue to look enhancing your abilities, which we talk about competencies in the form of. And then is all about, are you really happy in this environment, in this conditions, in what you are doing? If all these three things exist, probably it will help you perform. But to me, that's what is potential in individuals. Performance is performance.
Potential in my view is judged, it is not measured. So it's difficult to measure potential. It is a judgment of the future impact that individual can make. And like Vimal said, that depends on if the person is engaged and will stay there in the first place. Does the person have the capability to do the next role? And is there an aspiration to do the next role?
There's no way the skill does not have any meaning at all.
That's correct. So it's will and skill put together.
So Radhika, how organizations usually look at it is only in succession planning. When you're sitting at the at the board, and when you have to sit and plan your next level of leadership and see who is the person who can play another role, not necessarily he's the one who's going to play. That is where the 9-box grid comes into play, and performance and potential is judged. And as he just mentioned, it is a perception based on his previous performance, as well as based on various peer feedback that one receives on what is it that he's capable of, which may not all be displayed in your job. So a person may be very good in external networking, which is not necessary in his role as finance head. He's doing his role and giving his numbers on a quarterly basis. But peer feedback is again taken in, and it's usually done during succession planning.
If we go in that detail, Mr. Radhika, what typically we look at, I think a few factors typically considered as the kind of indications that the persons can take up higher roles. One, I think she touched upon that, whether the person goes beyond his or her defined expected role or goal. Okay. So there are few people in the group, always you will find that they show this kind of traits. Another thing which we typically look at is that learning agility. So someone, because many people are given different cross-functional projects. So this is not always
in his defined list of things which he is supposed to do. So how much he shows interest and how much he learns from that new role or new projecting roles is something which is also considered as one of the defined parameters of potentials. And there is few more, I don't really offhand recollect those things. But these are something which is quite well defined. So suppose in our discussions, when a manager puts someone high on potentials, we always challenge them that, I think you have to just literally prove that why this person is different from others. And unlike what she said, in our case, we always look at it as a talent pool. So it's not exactly always against a certain particular position. So we look at, let's say that there are around 10 people or 15 people who are someone who actually are showing high potential traits. And then we develop them. And that point of time, it again varies from organization to organization. Some organizations names them as high potential, some organizations does not do that. But we typically have different interventions associated with those individuals, where indirectly he gets the hint very clearly that I am being groomed for some other roles. If that answers your questions.